Pop those drinks. It's time for Sports Around the Bar. Hey guys, welcome into Sports Around the Bar, your weekly sports talk show. As always, I am Jakey Bartender, and I'm joined on center stool by Drew. And Drew, it's all football today, man.
It's all football, man. It's getting down real close to this draft. I'm excited to go. I know you're excited to go.
Absolutely.
We'll probably get rained on in the first game, but, so be it.
Miles, good
First
to see you,
game,
man.
first
day.
round.
Yeah. You know what he meant. The moral of the story is, Drew, it is going to be packed. We're not sure what we're going to look like down there, but we are going to be live at the draft. We're going to show you guys as much of it as humanly possible so you can kind of get that experience if you're not traveling all the way down to Nashville. Just come see the draft. It's going to be fun. I don't know who's going anywhere, but we'd put together some mock drafts where we would think a lot of these teams are going to go. So we're going to talk about that in the show. We're going to talk about these reports about Kyler Murray not being the first overall pick. We're not sure if you've heard that or not, but came out, I think it was CBS who dropped that bombshell saying the Cardinals are no longer even considering him or something like that. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about TJ Yeldon signing with the Bills and what that means in the AFC East. But let's start Kyler Murray here first, Drew. Any smoke to this, or any fire to all this smoke coming up about Kyler Murray not being the guy in Arizona anymore?
It would really, truly surprise me if this is completely true at all. I mean, it just blows my mind that people sit there and don't think that he's going to be taken. He fits the scheme. There's no doubt about it. There's way too much talk about it prior to this. Rosen's gone. Murray's there.
The one thing I will say is last year we kind of had a similar scenario where Baker Mayfield, nobody was talking about him being the first overall pick. And then kind of some whispers started coming out of Cleveland there a couple days before. And then next thing you know, he's the first guy off the board. Could Nick Bosa be that pick? Could it be Quinnen Williams that steals it, that we just hear more about him here in the next day or two, and all of a sudden Kyler Murray's out?
Miles, you're a proud Cardinals fan. Maybe you got a little bit of insight, man. Maybe you're hearing a little bit different than we are. As far as I'm concerned, it's nothing. It's just fake smoke.
And I'm in the same boat. To me, what this is, Arizona probably did put this out, and what they wanted to do is free it up for all the rest of the NFL teams to say, hey, if you really, really want him, and you want to come trade me multiple first-round picks, if you really want us to just, take advantage of you here, here's your chance. You're going to have an opportunity to go trade for Kyler Murray. The question to me, though, is that actually going to be what happens? I don't know if anyone's going to actually reach up on this guy or not. Maybe the Dolphins, maybe the Redskins. I guess that's my next best question here, Drew, because I don't believe these reports. I think he's going to Arizona. But let's say there is a trade partner. Let's say there is a team that's willing to go out there and just trade multiple first-round picks to move up there and get him. Who is it? Which team do you see making that move to make this happen?
That's the thing is I don't really think that he fits anybody else's offense that they're running right now. I mean, it'd be a change of offense if they went up there and took Kyler Murray that high, because you'd have to start him day one. I mean, first overall pick, it's day one starting. So that means you're changing your offense based on it. And the only one that I think is in a position to do that is Arizona Cardinals.
Could it be Oakland? I mean, it's John Gruden.
Miles says to tell him to get an offensive lineman. That's what he's hoping for. He's hoping
Jonah Williams going first overall. I don't know if there's another worthy guy. Maybe Juwan Taylor, but he's not. He's a little rough around the edges. I don't know if I'd spend the first overall pick on him. If it's me, I think it'd be Jonah Williams, and I just trust that his short arms aren't really going to be that big of a deal, and that the way he blocked guys in college is the way he's going to block them in the pros. I think it's a bit of a reach for Arizona. I think if that's the case, you might as well trade this pick down. You might as well trade with someone looking for Nick Bosa or for Quinnen Williams or for Josh Allen. You can go back 3, 4, 5 spots and realistically go get someone like Jonah Williams. So I don't know if they're going to go with that at pick 1. If they do trade this down, though, Drew, I think it's either Oakland who moves up because they just want to go grab him, and they have all that capital in the draft here, Drew. They have the ammunition to do it, or it's going to be Miami. I don't think Washington, having signed Case Keenum, is going to be that desperate for it. Miami needs a quarterback. They have Ryan Fitzpatrick as the starting quarterback right now and nobody else. At least realistically, nobody else.
It's not going to be him. They're going to want a tall quarterback that can
they have
sit
a
in the pocket.
new head coach, new regime. Adam Gase is gone. It's going to be a new offense.
He's coming from New England. He's going to kind of want a Tom
But he's a
Brady-esque
defensive guy. He's a defensive guy if he leaves it up to the offense.
And you think that he didn't watch Tom Brady rip
tear
apart
up
his defense?
Well, I mean, yes, you get a Tom Brady if you have the option to get a Tom Brady, but he's obviously not always there. I think you take the best available, and if you're Miami, I still see them as one of the most likely trade partners with Arizona if this actually comes to pass. But I don't think it's happening. I think Arizona's going to want too much to move all the way down to 13. I don't see the Dolphins giving that up.
I don't really see anyone trading up to get the number 1 pick. It's not a top tier quarterback like an Andrew Luck or something like that come out of the draft. I highly doubt anyone's going to go up there and draft Kyler Murray that high. If it is Oakland, I think Oakland is willing to wait until number 4 to take Kyler Murray if it's that big of a deal to him. Now Sharif is telling them they're telling us that the Cardinals are going to trade down. But the question is, who's willing to pay that price? Because you're not going up to get a quarterback.
And the other thing is, with this defensive side of the ball so deep on this class, do you really need to trade up for Nick Bosa? Or can you wait and take a guy at 8 if you're Buffalo? Can you go take somebody else at 14, 15, 16, wherever you need him, and get somebody who's almost as good and not have to give up all those extra picks? So I think it's going to be tough to trade up for one of the defensive guys. I really do. I like Nick Bosa a lot, but is Nick Bosa that much better than Montez Sweat or Rashawn Gary or any one of these guys behind him? I don't know.
Compared to Nathan, he says Nick Bosa and Devin Bush are the best 2 players in the draft. Completely ignoring Quinnen Williams. Completely ignoring.
And Devin White, who I think is a better linebacker. I don't think Devin Bush is the best linebacker in this draft, but that's okay. I get it. He's great. Devin Bush is a great player. I just think Devin White's a little bit better than he is. Nick Bosa might be the best. I think Quinnen Williams I'd probably give the edge to because those interior guys that rush quarterbacks are so hard to find. As opposed to edge rushers, you're going to get a good edge rusher who's going to rush a quarterback, right?
Yeah.
So Nick Bosa is the best edge rusher in this draft, but I think I give Quinnen Williams just a slight edge if all things equal. Nick Bosa does play the more valuable position, though. So I'll give you that.
Joey, what's going on, man? Nate says, I'm going to be so disappointed if the Packers draft a tight end with either first-round pick. Dude, be prepared to be disappointed,
if
my
Hawkinson
opinion.
falls there, I don't think they're going to take it. I don't. I don't think...
I
don't think tight end is what Aaron Rodgers looks for. I think he's just a wide receiver guy. He's a guy who likes throwing it to the outside and everything, or throwing it to the little guy over the middle and letting him run with the ball. We've seen him have guys like Martellus Bennett in the past, guys like Jimmy Graham that haven't worked out. I just don't see them reaching on a tight end where you could go take a wide receiver at that spot or trade down and then go take another wide receiver. So, I don't know. It's a thin class this year, I think, at tight end. You only have 1 or 2 guys out of Iowa that are really good, elite level talents, and then everybody else is just kind of in the middle somewhere. So, I don't think they're going to go reach on somebody, but maybe they decide this is the year they change things up.
It's a possibility. Bart says he's a Miami fan, and they definitely need a quarterback, but he thinks they'll go defense.
I think you got to go with whatever's available. I wouldn't want to see them reach on a quarterback. Like, this probably should not be Drew Lock or Daniel Jones at 13 there. I think that's a mistake. But I think, Bart, you just got to take the best available player when it falls to you if you don't move up for a quarterback. If you're going to go get one, you might as well go get the best and just trade multiple first rounds to make it happen.
So if Haskins falls to them at 13, do they take him?
Yeah.
I haven't taken him.
If he's there, I would do it. But if Haskins goes before that to the Giants at 6, I would not go and just say, we need a quarterback, let's just go take the next guy.
No,
I would definitely wait
until
on
the
that.
second round.
Exactly. So Miami's got some questions. They need too many things, I think, right now to just go out there and say we can reach on a quarterback and afford to let him not work out. They just got to take a best available player. If he falls to you, go take that quarterback. If not, go get a defensive end. Go get a defensive tackle. Play better on the defensive side of the ball and take your quarterback next year.
Sharif says there's a lot of value coming out of the 3rd and 5th rounds, man. We completely agree with you. That's why we are going into our 2nd round into our mock draft. Normally we just do the 1st round, but now we're going to go ahead and do the 2nd round just because there is so much talent.
It's tough to call.
And it's 1st round talent falling into the 2nd
Exactly.
day draft.
There are so many wide receivers in this class that might actually be NFL receivers here in a couple of years, guys who actually pan out and last. Defensive end is huge. Defensive tackle is huge in this draft. It's pretty skinny at linebacker and tight end, but offensive line isn't bad. The running backs, even though there's not really a star in this class, I think there's a lot of guys that are interchangeable, and especially in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, like you mentioned. We're going to see a lot of guys off the board there, I think. So there are a lot of positions in this draft that if your team needs this, you can afford to wait. You don't have to take them because there's only a couple guys. Right. I think the only exception is linebacker and tight end, like I mentioned. Those are really the only couple that only have a couple elite players.
Day says, how are we still not discussing Witten coming out of retirement? I mean, what is there to discuss, man?
We did talk about it when it happened.
We definitely did, but what is there still to discuss? I mean, he's got a full year off. I mean, if he's going to be healthy, this would be the time for him to be healthy. I mean, but we saw what he did the year before he retired. Slower, couldn't get separation in his routes. I mean, not that he's not important to this offense because he's definitely going to be, but now he's taking a snap count. Why in the world are you going to give a guy that just retired and had a whole year off a snap count? He needs to play every freaking snap until he gets injured, in my opinion.
I'm okay with it. I think you can limit him a little bit. But hear me out here. As the team, if you're going from a pure Moneyball standpoint, sure, just get what you can.
He is not your future.
But he is also a legend. You don't want Jason Witten out there and just pound him into the ground.
Okay,
You don't want to hurt the
he's
legacy.
not going to be a 4-down tight end, but
No.
he is going to be out there as much as you possibly can because you can't put him out there just in passing downs. You can't just put him out there in run downs. He's got to be consistently out there. Unless you're drafting a tight end in this draft, either or actually, he needs to be playing the most snaps.
Even if he just turns into a mentor, if that's all you get, and he gets a
He can put
couple
Swain.
hundred snaps, I don't know, Drew. Tell you the truth, I think they do need another tight end, but that's also a luxury position. It's one of those positions you don't have to have in the NFL to be successful. So if you get a couple hundred good snaps out of Jason Witten, I think you're better for having him.
Well, Day says he didn't think it was a smart move. He should have stayed retired.
It's hard giving up the game, man. I think he was pretty miserable in the booth. And I say, look, as long as it gets him out of the booth and I don't have to listen to him on Sunday Night Football, I'm cool with it. Or Monday Night Football, I mean. I'm okay with it.
Sheree says, well, the Ravens don't have a second-round pick, man. You don't think they're going to trade and try to get up in there? They should. I mean, they absolutely should. There's so much value in the second round right now. I get they couldn't see that future coming, but maybe it's worth them, getting out of the first round and picking up a couple second-round picks.
It could be, but then again, when you have deep drafts, sometimes you can sit tight because you may not get that guy you're necessarily eyeing, but you're going to get someone who's almost as good at the pick you're already at. So you don't have to give up those extra picks. You get to roll those late round picks. It's like rolling the dice. And if you hit on those, that's how your team goes from being good to being really, really good to winning Super Bowls, to being great.
And Sharif, we talked about it when we did our fan mock draft about trading for my second round picks as the Chiefs. And, they do need to target teams like the Chiefs or the Texans that have multiple second round picks and maybe say, hey, I got this first round pick. It's available for you. Come get your guy and then take 2 second round picks this draft. I mean, it's definitely out there.
Exactly. Now, Sharif said you could beat Jason Witten in a foot race, and you might be able to, but it's never been about speed with Witten. It's his size. I mean, the way he turns his body away from you, you can either play underneath and have him throw it over your head and let him just outreach you because you're only a cornerback, or you can try to play over the top and let him just use that body to shield the ball from you. It's not about speed with Witten. It's about his size. It always has been. I think even now, even with him losing steps, he's still going to have some effectiveness just because he's still the same size.
Yeah,
he's still
absolutely.
just as tall as he was when he retired. He didn't get any shorter. So
Are you sure?
I'm not worried about that. Probably. You never
Okay.
know. Sometimes the spine decompresses. He's the same size. So I think there is some value to be had there out of Jason Witten.
Yeah. And then again, I'm going to say no snap count. Just play the guy. Play him like you normally would. Why in the world would you give a guy that just had a whole year off?
Because you want him
a
to
snap
last
count?
through week 4.
He never really had injury issues. So why now is he going to have injury issues? I mean,
Well, he had never had injury issues that took him out of the game. There was multiple times he had
Well,
like both
every-
knees where he's like tearing
every-
stuff. His feet are messed up.
every
his ankles
NFL
are messed
player
up.
plays hurt.
And it's compounded when you're talking about him being 36 years old, Drew. I mean, this is years and years and years of
Tom
those
Brady
injuries
can do it.
going
Why
on his
can't
knees.
Jason Witten?
Because Tom Brady's not getting hit like Jason Witten's getting hit. All right, we'll move on. We'll talk about T.J. Yeldon. We don't have to talk
Is
about
this
Jason
news?
Witten
Is this
all
news?
day. It was it was a couple months ago when it happened.
no,
but-
don't talk about the TJ Yeldon.
Yeah, it's kind of news. It's good for Buffalo. I mean, especially when you talk about them having Frank Gore at 36
That's all you
and
need.
LaShawn McCoy, who looks
Frank
like he's
the
36.
Tank, man. Frank the Tank.
I think signing any 25-year-old running back is good news for Buffalo. So yeah, let's talk about it.
Let's do it.
He was a second-round pick out of Alabama. Everybody was kind of sitting there saying Alabama running backs never pan out. He's one of the poster boys for that. Do you think going to Buffalo, going to another run-heavy scheme, can he turn it around or kind of like restart his career in Buffalo that he couldn't get done in Jacksonville that seemingly only wanted to run the ball?
If McCoy's still left on this roster and they do not draft a running back, he's going to see very little time because they're going to keep McCoy, they're going to keep Frank, and they're going to literally split time between those two guys. And not that TJ Yeldon couldn't find time because we all know McCoy can't stay healthy. You're going to get Frank for 16 games. So, I mean, it kind of depends. I don't really see McCoy staying there. I think he will be cut at some point in time. They're not going to get any trade value out of him.
You know who else stays on snap counts? Frank Gore. And guess what? He's going to be on a snap count too. And if something does happen to McCoy, and McCoy has had some injury history, I think having TJ Yeldon there to be that kind of rotational guy with Frank Gore, so you have two guys that can be the man as opposed to just saying, well, Frank, we know we had you on a snap count, but you're our last running back who can actually do anything. I think this is a good move, actually.
Trey says with TJ Yeldon with the Bills, he can see the Bills will trade McCoy. The question is, man, what's McCoy's worth? I mean,
He's a 30-year-old running back that's hurt all the time.
34?
No, he's like 30. I think he's 30.
33?
No, I think he's like 30.
31? He's got to be over 30.
I think he's 30 now. He
got-
might be 31 by the end of the
he's
season.
gotta be
but I think he's
31
30
before
now.
the
The
draft
moral of the
starts.
story is he's old. All right, for a running back, that's incredibly old, and we're starting
He
to
can't
see
stay
that
healthy.
decline
Yeah.
in talent out of him.
Well, either way, man, maybe a 7th round pick, a late 7th round pick at that point in time, is it worth you trading him? At this point in time, I just release him.
No, I agree. And are you going to give up a 7th-round pick to bring on LaShawn McCoy? I mean, I really don't think he's worth anything more than like a 7th-round pick, like you said. Maybe a really late 7th-round pick or a conditional pick. I'm not giving up the farm for LaShawn McCoy at this point. No. Also, he is 30.
Okay.
July 12th, so he will be 31 next year.
All right, he'll be 31. All right. Nate, it's good to have you, man. I'm glad that you joined us for this little bit. Enjoy your Bucks going ahead and sweeping the Pistons. I don't know how exciting that is for you, but we all saw it coming. Oh. So, yeah, we're all being told McCoy is 30 and Gore is 34. All old.
I thought Gore was 35 or 36. It's okay. We don't have to fact check you. I'll take it at your word. Frank Gore, 34 for a running back. I'm Mark Dunn level numbers here. He's pretty old, right?
Yeah. But he can still play.
He can.
He'll get close to 1,000 yards. I guarantee it.
That might be a bit optimistic, but I think he's probably going to give you 6 or 7. I think this last year we saw that little bit of the decline.
And the crappy Miami team that he tried to play for?
Yes, that one. Now he's playing for a crappy Buffalo offensive line.
Whoa.
I like Buffalo as a team.
There are 6 new offensive linemen for that.
Yeah, and one of them's any good, and it's Mitch Morris.
If he can stay healthy.
Exactly. So Buffalo does not have a stellar offensive line. I think everybody knows that. I think bringing on some young legs like TJ Yeldon to wrap this kind of topic up, I think is a good move for Buffalo because you need to have younger players at the running back position, and they probably got him on the cheap. It was a 2-year deal, but they didn't release the financials, at least not up to the point of the show, so they probably got him pretty cheap too. Good move, Buffalo.
They'll be
You're still second in the division, but good move, Buffalo.
They'll be drafting a running back at some point in time in the mid rounds.
All right, Drew, let's move on to our mock draft next. Obviously, if you've been paying any attention to us at all, we've been going through our final mock draft, which is, if you don't know, Thursday of this week is when it starts. We're in round 2 right now. We're going to start with pick 49, and the Browns are on the clock. Drew, take it away, man. Who do you have the Browns taking with their first pick overall in the second round?
They're going to absolutely be excited about this pick. They're going to be taking Jeffrey Simmons, defensive lineman out of Mississippi State. Now, I know that you had him going a lot earlier.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't. I think with ACL tear and the allegations of him beating his girlfriend in 2016 make his stock drop. Regardless, this guy is a top 10, top 15 talent of defensive lineman. The Browns are excited to have him. If they don't have him at the beginning of the year or at all, they're willing to wait for this guy.
This does sound like a John Dorsey pick. Take a guy, let him wait a year, and then eventually have him evolve into an amazing player on the defensive line. The question is going to be, who's going to be patient enough to go spend a pick on a guy that's going to miss probably all of 2019? I mean, there's talk that, okay, he could be ready for the beginning of the season, but that is incredibly optimistic. I think best case scenario, you're getting a rookie who's going to be coming back for the last 4 games of the season.
I was about to say, maybe 3/4 of the season's gone.
Exactly. So I really don't see a lot of value there for this year, but you're talking about a whole career here. You're talking about 10 to 12 years out of this defensive lineman. You might as well go take him because he's one of the best ones in college. If you're going to get one of the best defensive linemen, a second-round pick is totally worth it. I have him going to the Colts all the way up at 34, but you don't have him, or you have him falling this far into the draft. The Browns get him. Fantastic move.
Yep.
Moving forward, I have the Browns taking Taylor Rapp, safety out of Washington. Obviously, Jabril Peppers is gone. They need that replacement safety who's going to be able to come up and help in run support. Taylor Rapp's that guy. He's an absolutely amazing hitter. He only missed a couple tackles in college. He's one of the best tackling safeties in this draft. It's like having an extra linebacker on the field. It's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, I had him going a little bit earlier. I can't remember who it was now off the top of my head, but it's a great pick. I mean, if he falls to him, he's definitely one of the best hard-hitting safeties in this draft. It's worth picking up.
Absolutely. Let's talk Vikings next year, Drew. Go ahead.
I have him taking Chris Lidstrom, offensive lineman out of Boston College. There's no doubt about it. The Vikings suffered offensively because of that offensive line. You can bring as much help as you possibly can. Weed out the bad ones. Keep bringing them in. I think at this point in time, you have to keep going offensive line and hopefully secure that offensive line for Kirk Cousins.
Look, I can't dog any offensive line pick for the Vikings at all this year. If you look at the way that offensive line played last year, good pick, Drew. I mean, you could have put anyone up there. You could put a 7th-round lineman, and I'm like, yeah, they could probably take a shot on him. So I like that pick. I already had one coming off the board of the Vikings in the first round. I think it was Andre Dillard I had going to them. So I actually went a different direction and took Ja'Kai Polite, defensive end out of Florida. There's been all kinds of talk about his stock dropping majorly because he had a bad combine and he had an even worse pro day where your numbers are supposed to get better. He's a little light as well. He's only 230-some pounds for a defensive end in the NFL. That's kind of an issue. But he had one of the best years in college. He's one of those defensive ends that if you develop him, might wind up being an incredible talent, and the Vikings are good at developing defensive players. I think they're going to take him, let him be their 3rd or 4th defensive end here going into next year, and they're going to try to keep this defense elite for as long as possible.
Draft your strength. Why not?
Exactly. Let's talk Titans next.
Let's do it.
I have him taking Yeldon Jenkins, center, out of Mississippi State. He's an amazing pass protector. I could have gone a different direction. This is the first interior offensive lineman off my board entirely. They could have gone another direction, but at the end of the day, they could not protect Mariota at all last year. They're going to take Yeldon Jenkins, put him in at center, and shift Ben Jones over to play guard. And hopefully that fixes this offensive line, because Ben Jones has played his best football at guard here in the past couple of years. They're going to get a new center. They just signed Roger Saffold. Hopefully the Titans get the offensive line fixed and Mariota doesn't run into 38 sacks. He will still, but hopefully he doesn't.
Titans are going to go ahead and double down on edge rushers because I already have taken Farrell out of Clemson. It's edge rusher in the first round. But I'm going to go ahead and have Chase Winovich out of Michigan State, another edge rusher. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Titans struggled on getting to the quarterback, bringing in 2 young edge rushers. I know you're going to already have that gentleman.
The Patriots.
No. The gentleman that you have already, that you're telling me that you didn't want the Titans to see a little bit more play out of your edge rusher. Come on.
Harold Landry.
There it is. You're going to get a rotation out of these 3 guys. If Landry's still there and they still believe in him, why not have a rotation? Because guess what? You struggled at getting to the quarterback.
Absolutely. I don't think any kind of edge rush or any kind of guy that can get after the quarterback is not a bad pick in today's NFL. The Titans need help there. I mean, except for Jarrell Casey, Harold Landry's still a bit of a question mark, only putting up 6 sacks last year. He played as the 3rd defensive end, so he didn't get as many snaps as some other starters did. But we don't know that he's going to be a great player. I think the Titans need any kind of help on the defensive line they can get. I think this is a good pick. Let's move forward and talk Steelers, though. Obviously, I have them taking another wide receiver because if you don't know, they lost a wide receiver here in this offseason named Antonio Brown. They need a replacement for that deep threat, for the guy who can run down the field and stretch things out. And I have them taking Terry McLaurin, wide receiver out of Ohio State. He didn't have huge production, but there were a lot of great receivers at Ohio State. I think that's what a lot of that can be attributed to. But he's very fast. He's got one of the best vertical threats out of any one of these guys. He's one of the biggest vertical threats out of any guys in this draft. I think McLaurin can actually help the Steelers reestablish that down-the-field presence that they need. Because without him, I think they become a little more short yardage with a guy like Smith-Schuster.
Yeah, I don't blame you for them taking a wide receiver. And one thing the Steelers are good at finding is late-round wide receivers that develop great in their offense. I think they're going to keep on focusing on that secondary. I think they're going to take Darnell Savage Jr., safety out of Maryland, one of the most underrated safeties in this draft. They need help in the secondary. There's no doubt about it. It got lit up against my boys, the Kansas City Chiefs, multiple times. It's time, this year, and it's time for them to focus on it. As much as I like the wide receiver pick, I think they can still find value in these late rounds.
Let's move on to talk about the Eagles next. Obviously, they acquired this pick from the Ravens. I have them taking a linebacker because we've seen some pretty significant departures here with guys like Jordan Hicks leaving. I think they need to address that as well because I already have them addressing the secondary previously. I have them taking a wide receiver. Actually, I think I have them taking a wide receiver. But I already have them. I do have safety as a need and also probably cornerback as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later when I get to my next Eagles pick. I jumped ahead of myself. I have them taking Tevon Coney, inside linebacker from Notre Dame. He's a very balanced linebacker that can play the run and the pass very well. He's a guy who can shift around and play in the 4-3 system that Jim Schwartz is going to want to run. I think having a guy like this who can cover, who can also support the run, is going to move some of the strength of this defense away from just their defensive line because that has been their bread and butter for the past few years. Bringing on any kind of linebacker help can only make this team better.
I think the Eagles are going to focus on their offensive line. I think it's still going to be the main focus. It's about starting a run game. It's about keeping Carson Wentz upright. They're going to go ahead and draft Titus Howard, a tackle out of Alabama State. Any help they can get. You got an aging Jason Peters there that can't seem to play 16 games. Any kind of help you can get offensively to bring that in, it's worth bringing in.
I totally agree, man. Offensive line is a good pick as well for them. Let's talk about the Texans next. They got this pick from the Seahawks.
2 picks in a row.
Absolutely. I'll let you take the first one. Go ahead.
You want to just knock out 2 picks, then you get 2 picks?
Sure.
Let's do it. There's no doubt about it. Texans absolutely sucked offensive line. It's a little bit of an offensive line run. They've already picked one in the first round in my mock draft, but they're going to go ahead and take a second one. Eric McCoy, offensive lineman out of Texas A&M. Again, any kind of help. Any of these guys, if they just pan out just to be a 16-game starter that does anything better than what they had before, it's worth them taking. And they also lost the safety. They lost the Honey Badger, the Kansas City Chiefs, the free agent. They're going to need to find someone. They're going to take Amani Hooker, defensive back out of Iowa. Don't really know if he's going to play corner. Don't really know if he's going to play safety. But at this point in time, does it really matter? They need help.
Absolutely. I think both are going to address needs. I have them taking Garrett Bradbury, center from NC State. I already had another offensive lineman off the board in their first round. You got to protect Deshaun Watson. He cannot take 60 hits like he did last year, 60 sacks like he did last year. You got to address that, and I think they're also taking Josh Jacobs, running back out of Alabama. I think that's going to help them address a long-needed positional upgrade at that position. Obviously, they have not had the running back of the future for years now. I think they need to move on and bring in a guy who can catch the ball, who can be a safety valve in case Watson is under pressure. I think is a huge thing for the Texans. I think they need to do this.
You know, that's exactly what we're talking about. These second round, third round draft picks that these teams are going to be taking. Both of the players that you talked about, I had taken in the first round.
Absolutely. All right, Drew. Let's talk about the Patriots next. They got a pick from the Bears, and now at pick 56, I have them taking Chase Winovich, linebacker from Michigan. They need edge rushers. Trey Flowers is gone. They signed Michael Bennett on a 1 or a 2 year deal. I think it was a 1 year deal, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Either way, they traded for him. He's a 33-year-old edge rusher. They need help in the defensive line. They're going to go bring on a guy like Chase Winovich, who has an amazing motor, who's a guy that plays hard on every play, and he's one of those guys that seems to fit that culture really well and can also get after the quarterback. Everyone has Rashawn Gary going before him. I think this might be the best lineman to come out of Michigan this year.
This is exactly what Belichick would want to draft. This is a guy that fits his system, the way the Patriots play. But that's why one of his proteges with the Titans is going to take him a couple picks before then. And that's why I don't see him falling to him. I actually see them focusing on that tight end position. You know, Marcelo Bennis is going to come out of retirement, and they're going to play him for another year. But they're going to pick someone else, and all the big names are gone. So they're going to be looking somewhere else. They're going to look a little bit deeper in the draft. They're going to be looking at Dawson Knox, tight end from Ole Miss. Any kind of help that they can get from the tight end position, they're going to bring it in. They're going to miss Gronk immensely. Marcelo Bennis will not be a Gronk. They got to find kind of that next guy to fit that shadow.
I agree. All right, Drew, moving on. Let's talk Eagles next. I have them taking a safety because, like I said, they need to address the secondary. You talked about that a couple picks ago. I think it may slip a couple picks, but I have them taking Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, a safety out of Florida. This guy has the coverage skills to play in the slot, in the nickel package. He can also play free safety as well. He's one of the best coverage safeties in this group, and I think the Eagles could use him on the back end to make up for some of the defensive line's efficiency. I mean, they need guys who are going to be able to hold wide receivers from getting open for a couple seconds to let those great defensive linemen get to the quarterback. He's the first step in recovering in the secondary.
I like this pick. I had him going a little bit earlier in the second round, but you can't really blame them if that's what they're going to do. Their secondary needs a lot of help. Well, I'd say just a little bit of help. Really, the Eagles are a very stout team, but they're going to focus on their linebackers. Blake Cashman out of Minnesota. They're obviously aging. They signed a lot of these guys to 1 year deals. They're not, there's not a lot. Actually, all the Eagles players seem like they're stuck on 1 or 2 year deals. They need to start focusing on when these guys leave, who you're going to bring in. I think every pick the Eagles make is all about what's that next guy a year from now, 2 years from now. So when you look at like Titus Howard at the 53rd pick, and you look at Blake Cashman at the 57th pick, these are guys that might not start this year, might get a little bit of playing time, but they're going to be there next year or the year after that.
Absolutely. Let's talk Cowboys next. I'm sure Cowboys fans are waiting for their first pick, not having one in the first round. Where do you have them going here? Because I think there's a lot of directions they could go.
A lot.
I think I'm going to go with wide receiver here. I'm going to have them take Deebo Samuel, wide receiver out of South Carolina. This guy is going to be an amazing slot wide receiver. He broke 21 tackles on 62 catches here, Drew. It's almost a third of the time. He caught the ball and then made somebody miss. You need a guy like that to play in the slot. You need someone who's going to make up for Cole Beasley being gone. And I just don't believe in Randall Cobb long term. I think the Cowboys could upgrade at wide receiver. Getting any kind of athleticism on the inside is going to be good. I think Deebo Samuel is going to be that next guy who's going to be the Robin to Amari Cooper's Batman.
And I don't blame you for that pick. But when you look at their wide receiver, you got Cooper, you got Hearns, and now you got Cobb. How much, and Winton coming back, how much time does this guy get? You're talking about your first pick. You need to make this pick the most important. They focus defensive line. They're going to go Charles Omenua, defensive lineman out of Texas. I slaughtered his last name, but they're going to focus on that because guess what their bread and butter is? A strong defense. They need a guy that they can put in there right away, and rotation at defensive line is a must.
I think that's a good direction, but again, I think when you look at their weaknesses last year, this was a different team as soon as you added Amari Cooper. I think if they get better on that side of the ball, we might talk about them being a first-round playoff team to maybe being a second- or third-round playoff team if they can get better at wide receiver.
I don't blame you.
Moving forward, let's talk about the Colts because they've had a lot of picks already. They had one in the first, one in the second already at the top of the round. This is their third pick already at 59. I have them taking Rock Ya-Sin, cornerback out of Temple. Now, I don't love this guy. He had some flash plays at Temple where he looked really, really good. He had some plays at Temple where he looked really, really bad. And typically, when you've got guys coming out of small schools like that, you want to see them dominate. But I think when you look at his size and you look how tall he is at cornerback, you're willing to roll the dice and say, I think I can teach him how to play corner a little bit better. I can teach him some technique things. And with that size, he's going to be able to match up with some of the bigger wide receivers in the NFL.
I don't blame you for taking a corner because I also took a corner, but Rock Ya-Sin has already gone off of my mock draft. They're going to be taking Tavon Mullen, cornerback out of Clemson. There's no doubt about it. They don't have a lot of holes in their defense, but secondary is definitely where they need the help at.
I agree with you. Let's move forward and talk about the Chargers next. I have them taking Kalen Saunders, defensive tackle out of Western Illinois. This guy moves just about as well as anybody I've ever seen on the defensive line, and he's 325 pounds here, Drew. He's going to be a nightmare rushing the passer, which from the interior is hard to find. There are some questions with his run game. There are some questions with his technique, but if you get a 325-pounder and you put him in front of some of these undersized interior offensive linemen, this guy's going to create havoc. I think the Chargers need to get better there. I kind of skipped it in the first round. I think second round is totally a good move for them to go out and grab a defensive interior guy.
I had them taking a defensive lineman in the first round, so they're going to focus a little bit different. It was really hard for me not to take a receiver at this point in time, but I think they're going to focus on who's their next quarterback. After Phillip Rivers decides to retire, Will Grier, quarterback out of West Virginia. I think this is a steal of the draft. I think this guy will be a good quarterback. He gets it 3-4 years. He might be all the way to his, fifth year before he starts, but if he can get this time underneath someone like Phillip Rivers, man, this guy could be good.
I think the biggest issue I have with that is they're in win now mode. And I kind of said this at the bottom end of the first round, is a lot of these teams at the bottom of this round think they're winning a Super Bowl here soon or are at the very least in range to do it. I think they're going to go a different direction instead of quarterback. But if Will Grier falls this far, as a GM, you got to be thinking about the future. Like, yeah, Phillip Rivers is getting up there in age. Maybe you do take him.
Luckily for the Chargers, they don't have a lot of glaring holes. And in my mock draft, they've already taken care of one, and that's the defensive line. So now they're going to go ahead, hey, doesn't hurt to have a great backup quarterback.
I think they could use a guard here, but I agree with you. I mean, if he falls and he's going to be that good of a quarterback, especially as a developmental guy, play behind Phillip Rivers, why not take him?
A lot of names, or a lot of people have him pointed towards the Chargers.
Let's talk our next pick in the Kansas City Chiefs at 61 here, Drew. There's a lot of directions they could go because obviously we know they need help all along the defensive side of the ball. They could go take a wide receiver to replace some of the guys they've lost like Conley. They could go offensive line to replace someone like Mitch Morris or just get deeper at the position. Where do you see them going?
Yeah, they got a lot of holes. There's no doubt about it. I mean, they got starters that have gone now. I mean, Kareem Hunt, running back, corners, definitely safeties, they need it. Defensive line, they need it. Offensive line, they need it. For a playoff team that went to the AFC Championship game, they got a lot of holes that need to be filled. But they're going to double down on corners because it is the most glaring hole they have. And if they can keep Fuller, and I have Rock Ya-Sin going as their first pick, they're going to go ahead and grab Justin Lane, corner out of Michigan State. Having 3 starting corners, because a lot of people play nickel, a lot of dime. This guy will find a lot of time to play. And Fuller, there's no doubt about it, he played his best ball in slot coverage.
I think that's a good pick. Obviously, you can never have enough cornerbacks in today's NFL, but I have them going defensive line instead. I didn't have them take one yet, so I have to give them one with guys like D Ford and Justin Houston being gone.
Right.
So I have them taking Anthony Nelson, edge rusher out of Iowa. He's been consistent through his 2 years of starting there at Iowa, and I think when you look at him, he's got some power moves. He's big enough where he can play inside next to Chris Jones if you need him to. I'm sure they'd like a faster guy to pair next to him, kind of that D Ford replacement, but for right now, they got to go with the power moves. Hope he turns into Justin Houston and get that guy who can play both interior and exterior if you need him to. He's a versatile defensive lineman that can play wherever the Chiefs need him to.
And don't get me wrong, I get it. It makes sense. But they did focus it a lot in the free agency. They traded for Ogba. They got Okafor. They got some of those guys, and their secondary is where they're really struggling.
But what's the issue with Ogba? He has like 3 sacks a year. You're the Chiefs.
Andy Reid's going to get the best.
You're going to tell me you're going to replace Justin Houston and D Ford coming off of last year with Emmanuel Ogba. That's why I got defensive end here.
Don't replace
and like I said,
guys.
He's versatile, so you can play him inside if you need to, and put Ogba on the outside. Run with whoever you need to, or you can play the best available guy on the defensive end if you need to.
They'll focus a defensive line. I just don't see it yet.
Moving forward, let's talk about the Saints, because obviously they have a few needs. They're one of the more complete teams in the NFL, but there's a lot of directions they can go here. They gave up their first-round pick, so this is their first pick in the draft, and I was really tempted to take a wide receiver here, Drew. I really was. But I already have a lot of them off my board. I think the bottom end of the first round and the top end of the second is going to be very receiver-heavy. I have them actually going with Halte Froholt, offensive guard / center out of Arkansas. He's an incredibly solid pass protector. He's good in the run as well. They're going to slot him in to replace Max Unger, who kind of surprised them after free agency started and retired. They need a replacement because you have to keep 39-year-old Drew Brees as healthy as possible if you're going to have any chance of winning anything with the Saints.
And I completely agree. It makes complete sense. But I did falter and go wide receiver. They're going to take Deebo Samuel, wide receiver out of South Carolina. There's no doubt about it. They missed that third receiver. Someone like Deebo, what he could come in and be, it's worth picking up for the Saints.
I totally agree. I think wide receiver is one of those positions you can't just lean on Michael Thomas, because if he was injured, I don't know who the Saints would have thrown to. I really don't. So
Nobody.
I really think Deebo Samuel's a good pick here. I think he's one of those guys that's dynamic enough where he can actually make things happen. It's kind of like that Alvin Kamara pick from a couple years ago where you're relying on athleticism and a guy who can make people miss. I looked at it, I was like, I got to go center here because
they need it.
Drew Brees is not going to be rolling out of the pocket like Mahomes and making things happen with his legs. You got to protect him. Moving forward, let's talk about the Chiefs. They're back on the board, getting their pick 63 from the Rams.
This is a pick that they're going to replace a Kareem Hunt. Yeah, they've done a little bit with Carlos Hyde, and there's no doubt about it. Those guys have too much tread off the tires. They need to get some young back there. David Montgomery, running back out of Iowa State. This guy is literally, in my opinion, one of the best all-around running backs in this draft. He can receive, he can run the ball up the middle, and he's good at pass blocking. This guy is literally a guy that almost fits the mold that Kareem Hunt left. Now, is he as explosive as Kareem Hunt? That's yet to be seen in the NFL, but I would love this pick to happen for them.
I think it's a good pick. I think it's still a little early on running back. There's a lot of these guys that probably will be in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, and I think they have some other needs they can address. I think they're going inside linebacker here with a guy like Blake Cashman. They're switching over to a 43. They're going to need 3 linebackers. They don't really have a lot of those guys. I know Reggie Ragland might translate. I know Higgins might translate. But you still need more linebackers there to play in a different type of system the Chiefs have run for the past few years. I think they're going to go take Blake Cashman, inside linebacker, out of Minnesota because he's athletic. He's going to be a sideline-to-sideline guy who's very fast. He can make some tackle. He's not the best tackler in the world, but he's a decent run support guy. He's not the best pass coverage guy, but he does that okay as well. You're getting a versatile linebacker here who's going to be able to slot in, play strong side, play weak side, play middle. He can play wherever you need him to. He's a plug-and-play linebacker that's going to help the Chiefs out because this defensive side of the ball has to get better if they're going to win a Super Bowl.
There's no doubt about it, but if they take him, he's going to have to play outside the middle. He's not going to be an inside linebacker. I think Hitchens or Ragland will take that position. We don't really know yet what exactly is going to happen. I know there's been speculation, but we just don't know. He's going to have to go on the outside.
And the good thing with 4-3 is there's not a ton of difference between it. It's not like the 34 middle versus outside linebacker where some guys rush, some guys play back and actually play the regular linebacker role.
Right.
I think they're going to be able to do whatever they need to with Cashman, and that's why I think they take him because of his versatility. Just like the defensive line, I think they need guys who are going to be able to play wherever they need them to because they're trying to figure things out on the defensive side of the ball. I think Cashman is the right choice here, but they could go running back. They need one of those too. I think after last year,
you're 100% right. They need a linebacker. To be honest with you, if they trade, I actually think they're going to trade it for one of the Devons. I honestly, truly think that. I think if they move forward, I get it. You want edge rusher.
Well, no. I think that's fine. If they get one of the Devons, I'm just trying to think. If I'm the Chiefs, would I give up my pick and then maybe one of the seconds that's going to take to go get one of the Devons?
I'm just saying.
I think the Devin White and Devin Bush might be gone by pick 11, Drew. Like, you've got a long way up to go. And would you do that for a linebacker?
If they think it fits their offense, yes. Or defense, yes. 100%.
That's a lot to give up for a middle linebacker. And I like middle linebackers. Everyone wants to have a Brian Urlacher. Everyone wants to have a Ray Lewis. It's just a long way up. That's all I can say.
We're still missing a Derek Johnson. Justin Houston was a linebacker before he kind of developed into more of the edge rusher. I mean, this is something that they're missing. And, I'm not saying it's going to happen. But they're not going to trade up.
But you're not counting it out either.
I'm not counting it out. They're not going to trade up to the top 5 or 10 picks and get an edge rusher. It's going to cost them too much. It might have to be.
I don't know, Drew. If I traded up, I think I might want Nick Bosa. If I'm giving up all that capital, I think I might want him. Or Quinton Williams.
1 second round.
Well, yeah, it's going to cost more than that. But I'm saying if I'm going to trade up, you might as well just throw it all out there and go get the best guy you can. I don't see them trading that far up because I don't think middle linebacker has the same kind of value as a position. I know everyone says it's the quarterback and defense, but really,
I think
the defensive line is where you win.
I think Devin Bush will fall into the teens, and that's where I think that's possible.
Maybe then they see the trade.
They could see the trade. That's where I was getting at. I don't think White's going to fall that far.
If he drops, I'll give you that.
That's kind of what I was getting at.
If he stays at value and probably goes like 10, 11,
I don't see it
I'm a little hard-pressed to see the Chiefs
happening.
going that far
Yeah.
up. All right, let's talk Patriots, our last pick
Let's
here.
do it.
I have them taking Max Sharping, offensive tackle out of Northern Illinois. Obviously, Brown is gone as their left tackle. You got to replace him again for the second year straight where you need a new left tackle. I see him going because he's been a solid pass protector for 4 years. He's one of those guys the Patriots are going to be able to develop. He's a safe bet to protect Tom Brady. And when you've got a 42-year-old quarterback, Drew, you do not let anyone rush him on the blind side. That's why I see them spending, a second-round pick trying to address that.
Makes sense, complete sense. Eric, what's going on, man? He says he hopes the Cardinals trade down. Man, we talked about it. If they don't take Kyler Murray, what value does the first-round pick in this draft have? Because it's not a top-tier quarterback like Andrew Luck, like there was a few years back, where people are going to trade, the house for it.
Exactly.
So how much do people want like Nick Bosa or Quinnen Williams or a Kyler Murray? How valuable is that guy?
Well, you could see some jumping and from even the top end of the draft. The Raiders could decide I want Nick Bosa instead of Quinnen Williams or Josh Allen, who falls to me, so maybe I trade up to 1 to go get him. Beyond much of that, I really think it's going to be tough to trade down with any of these teams like the Dolphins, like the Redskins, unless they just fall in love with Kyler Murray, and I just haven't heard that yet. We haven't heard any of that. They might be interested in moving up. I still think it's Kyler Murray. I think the Cardinals, they're blowing a little bit of smoke. They're putting it out there saying, if you want this pick, we're not even interested in a quarterback. Tell us what you'll give us.
Right.
But I really don't think they're even considering it. I think it's one of those things that it's just due diligence. They're still going to take the quarterback, and things are going to restart from there.
In my last pick for the second round, the Patriots at number 64, they're going to focus on their offense and their wide receiver core. They're going to take Kelvin Harmon, wide receiver out of North Carolina State. Now, I know you had him going off in your first round. Wide receiver, this draft class is just literally all over the board. You can literally take the top guy and literally switch him with the bottom guy, and it seems to make sense everywhere. Like you said, it's all about scheme fit. But there's no doubt about it. Patriots need help wide receiver. They need help offensive linemen. And at that point in time, the value's there. Take him.
I agree. I have Kelvin Harmon going in the first round of the Indianapolis Colts. I like him because he's a big receiver who has like a ton of down-the-field receptions. He's kind of like an Alshon Jeffrey to me. That's big, but can also make catches down the field. Again, maybe not quite that good, but maybe he develops into him.
Maybe he kind of mirrors what Josh Gordon was doing for them before he decided to.
I already gave him Andy Isabella. Who is a down-the-field guy who can play inside and out, so I have the Patriots going a different direction in round 2. But if they don't have a receiver at this point, you have to take one, right? I mean, there's no doubt. Edelman is the last man standing in that wide receiving room. You have to go get at least one wide receiver here, probably 2 or 3 if you're the Patriots, because you didn't address it that well in free agency. I know that everyone's going to sit there and say they signed the Broncos wide receiver in Demaryius Thomas, but come on. I mean, even in Houston last year, he wasn't doing a lot before he got hurt. He wasn't doing anything in Denver. He's pretty washed up. You're just rolling the dice at this point.
Jimmy says, do you guys think that Kyler Murray will develop like Russell Wilson did with the height thing being a factor? I think he has a lot of tools, and so he's on the fence with this guy and be able to jump to the draft.
Well, let me ask you this, Jimmy. Is it the worst thing in the world to roll the dice and see if he does if you're Arizona? I mean, you already have Josh Rosen on an incredibly cheap contract. You're going to be able to bring in another guy that if he works out, great. If he doesn't, I get it. You spent a really high pick, the first overall pick in a draft to get him, but it's the most important position in the NFL. I mean, think about some teams like Green Bay where and Indianapolis where these rosters should not be able to compete for the playoffs, but because they have that good of a quarterback, they are. I can't sit there and say rolling the dice and saying I'm going to go gamble on a quarterback is the worst move that you could make, because what if he does turn into Russell Wilson? All of a sudden you've got a really cheap quarterback. You have a couple of years to sit there and build this defense around him where you're going to be able to have a playoff window open simply because you made the right choice at quarterback. So it's one of the toughest calls for Arizona. It really is. You could take the sure thing and go get one of these defensive players. I think we know 2 of these defensive players at the very least, and Williams and Bosa are going to be really, really good. We're thinking Josh Allen is going to be too. Do you give up on that to go take a quarterback that you just did that last year? It's not an easy position, and if you're wrong, it's a quick way to lose your job as a GM.
the comparison is right on the mark. That's who I have compared to is Russell Wilson. I think he definitely has the composure in the pocket and the arm like Russell Wilson does, but I think he has that top elite speed. I think he's closer to like Michael Vick kind of level. I mean, you watch those highlights at Oklahoma, he just makes people miss. There's just no doubt about it. So this guy can remotely develop anywhere near those two quarterbacks. My question to you is, what would you trade to get Michael Vick in his prime? What would you trade to get Russell Wilson right now? How much would you give up as an Arizona Cardinal fan to take a player like this? So you absolutely,
and that's always the hardest question. But is he going to be him? Though?
That's the question. You're telling it's worth the gamble. It is absolutely worth the gamble to get remotely anywhere near to these kind of quarterbacks and what they did during their NFL careers. You absolutely take it. That's just my opinion.
And the only way you don't take him is if you get someone like Oakland, you get someone like Miami, you get someone like Washington, or even someone like Denver that says, I'm going to give you 2 first-round picks, a couple seconds, maybe a third, somewhere in there, where they just give you so many picks that you can rebuild a franchise on that. If they give you that, I'm okay with them moving off
What you would have to give up to get someone like Russell Wilson right now, or like Michael Vick in his prime, is what you should value this number 1 pick. If you believe in Kyler Murray and you think he could be that, you do it.
And Jimmy says he was definitely a game changer in college. He hopes he can develop into the NFL. But that's if you look at Arizona, and the reason they fired Steve Wilks and brought on Cliff Kingsbury is because they are saying we need a guy who's going to develop a quarterback, because that's what we believe is the most important thing here. I don't think you bring on Kingsbury if you're not taking a quarterback here. If you're taking a defensive player, I think Steve Wilks would have been, the head coach going into this year as well. I think they already decided before any of this even came to light that we're taking a quarterback and it's going to be Kyler Murray. Because remember, they have scouts year-round looking at these guys. They know Kyler Murray's coming out, or at least reasonably expect it.
Yeah.
They knew this guy was coming up, and that's why they said, even though we hired a coach last year, we need a new guy because we need someone who's going to develop him into the best quarterback he could be.
Yep, no doubt about it.
All right, Drew, that was fun. We did 2 rounds of mock drafts. Obviously, we're going to get 3 picks into the draft, and all that's going to be out the window. But it was fun. It's a fun little exercise. Yeah. We got some special thanks here tonight. Why don't you go ahead?
Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much for all your comments, likes, shares. We love all of it. We appreciate everything you guys give to us. I know that you guys have busy schedules, and you join us every evening that you possibly can. And I just want to give a special thanks to everyone out there that commented on tonight's show. Miles, Sharif, Nate, Nathan, Bart, Joey, Day, Chris, Eric, Jimmy. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much again.
Absolutely. The show is better with you guys. We appreciate it.
Oh, and Eddie. What's going on, man? I'm glad you could
join us.
Way
to make it, Eddie. Yeah, absolutely. We are absolutely glad to see you guys. The show is so much better when you're talking with us because, again, it's not just about what we think. We want to hear what you guys think on everything going on.
Before we end the show, let's go ahead and hit Eddie's comment. He says, Murray played 1 year against the Big 12 defenses. He won't be able to run around on the NFL defenses like that. Not sold on him. I would take Bosa. Man, before you go, I don't blame you. I get exactly what you're saying. But, they said that about Baker Mayfield, too. That's exactly what was said about Baker Mayfield. The reason why a lot of people said he is not a first-round pick, he will be one of those guys that slip in the second round. Well, guess what? They were all wrong. And I'm not saying that Kyler Murray is Mayfield, but that comparison of those two has already been made. It's just another kind of chink in that.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I think you did a pretty good job of covering it, but it just comes down to what are you willing to gamble here? Because Bosa is the safer pick, and an edge rusher is an incredibly important position, but no one is as important as the quarterback, and obviously Josh Rosen didn't get the job done. If you think this guy is that much better, you have to take him. I understand the Big 12 defense thing. I harp on it all the time, but Baker Mayfield was the same way. He beat up on those Big 12 defenses too, and guess what? Now he's beating up on NFL defenses. So,
and Kyler Murray looked better doing it.
You need to be careful. You need to look at how they throw the ball as opposed to what their stats look like.
Right.
But from everything we've seen, he throws the ball incredibly accurately as well.
Let's not forget, Kyler Murray did better than Baker Mayfield did. I'm just saying, in the college. Jimmy, yes, we'll be live Thursday night. I don't know how much we're going to do. There's going to be rain, and I don't know if you guys...
There's going to be 100,000 people in downtown
100,000 people down Nashville, and the way that they are doing the live, the main arena, it's like
terrible.
a lottery. It's like terrible. A lottery. If he's picked, he'll be there. If I'm picked, I'll be there. Or if we're both picked, we'll both be there. We won't. Either way, we'll be live at some point in time, probably multiple times throughout the night. I'm sure definitely during picks, we'll probably jump live and talk about the pick that's made.
Absolutely.
Just, of course, it depends on how drunk I get as well. It might just be him.
Everything is up. Again, you're counting at me not being any more drunk than you. But everything is up in the air for the draft. All I can tell you is we will be live at some point. We're going to try to make it as convenient for people. We'll probably be on there a lot because we're going to have some time to kill down there as well.
Absolutely.
But there's going to be 100,000 people, so we're not 100% sure what it's going to look like. The only thing we can say is we will be live at the NFL Draft at some point, and we hope to see you there.
Absolutely.
So for Sports Around the Bar, I'm Jake, your bartender. This is Drew. We can't wait to see you guys back on Wednesday where we're going to talk NBA and NHL just a day before the playoffs. You know, we want to catch up on those things as well.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about a lot of that. I'm sure we'll talk some football too. We never miss it. We will see you guys on Wednesday.
See ya.
See you later.